And now I'm going to read the last chapter of the Dragons of Kilve. Let's get the picture in. I will learn to do this one day. And this story is called Treasure Hunt. And here's the picture. The Dragon Master had a secret. No one knew what it was, but they guessed something very important was about to happen, for he had asked everyone to get ready for a very big party. For days on end, the dragons had stacked driftwood for a huge bonfire on a flat rock above the high tide mark. Fireworks mixed his special powders for a magnificent coloured smoke display. Morris and Sparky planned an aerobatic flypast, and as a special treat, Flamethrower and Ember had promised to sing. It was all very exciting. Everyone was so busy catching small sharks and making oyster sauce and seaweed bread, no one stopped to wonder why such a magnificent feast was happening. It wasn't even the Dragon Master's birthday. The evening of the party came at last. Everyone drank, ate, flew, danced, sang, until dawn began to show above the inland hills. Tired and happy, the dragons gathered quietly around the fire's dying embers. Then the Dragon Master stood up. "We've had a lovely party." "Hear, hear," boomed the bigger dragons. "Cool," squeaked the littlest ones. The Dragon Master smiled sadly. "And now the time has come for me to say goodbye." There was a long, shocked silence. "And not forever," he added gently, "but I will be away for about a year. I must go to the land of fire and ice because my cousin, the mistress of the Eastern Dragons, has asked for my help. It will be a long journey, but I won't forget you for a single moment." "But how will we manage without you?" asked Ember in horror. The Dragon Master smiled and opened his arms wide. "Everything you will ever need is right here." "But what if the Nidhogg comes back?" "What is there to be frightened of? You've defeated him once, you know what you have to do." A few of the smaller dragons began to cry, and the Dragon Master hugged them all, one by one. "I'll return as soon as I can, and the Unicorn Mistress has promised to graze her beasts on the fields nearby. In very great need, she'll send her white stallion to gallop the clouds to find me. Now," he said, springing to his feet and tossing his cloak over his shoulders, "I've a game for us to play before I leave at nightfall." The dragons didn't feel like playing, but they did listen. The Dragon Master spread his arms. "Hidden here at Kilve are 3 great treasures. They are very valuable indeed, and I want you to find them and bring them here. Then you'll see you have everything you need to look after yourselves until I return. Now get some sleep, return at high tide, and then the game will begin." The weary dragons dragged themselves back to their caves. Everyone felt so unhappy after all the fun of the party. A few scattered to lonely places and slept where they were. Others sifted through their hoards, looking for their most prized possessions. But what sort of treasure did the Dragon Master want? At high tide, they all met around a roaring bonfire, but the dancing light and comforting heat did nothing to cheer the unhappy dragons. "Well," asked the Dragon Master, "what ideas have you had?" The older dragons called out, "Cave brooms and fish-drying racks." "Real treasure has to be beautiful," protested Morris. "Like pearls and corals," offered Clarice, who had plenty of both. The Dragon Master just smiled. "Maybe, but I'll give you a clue. You might not be able to see the very best treasures." Immediately a hubbub broke out, but the Dragon Master would say nothing more, and he went away to pack. Tempers were fraying badly, and the Dragon Master hadn't even left. At last, in desperation, Treasure asked Flamethrower to make everyone be quiet and take their places for the great circle. Tired, curious, and grumpy, the dragons arranged themselves around Treasure, who'd climbed onto Fizzle's back so she could be seen. What do you think the Dragon Master means by valuable treasure? She asked, gazing at the sad blue-green faces. Beautiful, strong, edible, yelled 50 different roars and squeaks. Treasure held up a claw and everyone fell silent. Let us think, she said. If the Dragon Master is going away for a while, what will be the most valuable things we can have? There was a long silence. Then, good weather? Plenty of fish. Nothing nasty around. Definitely no sluggy things, came the replies. Then the argument started again. Fawkes flapped his wings noisily. Those sorts of things don't count, he sneered. Anyway, as the treasures are invisible, the game's not fair. Furnace growled at Fawkes. The Dragon Master only said we might not be able to see what we're looking for, so good weather and no slug creatures could count. Same thing, sneered Fawkes, and he went into a sulk. Igneous was about to accidentally breathe some rather hot air onto Fawkes's tail when Treasure called for silence again. Let's all go away, calm down and think, she urged. It's probably all very simple and right under our noses. The Dragon Master would never ask us to do the impossible. One by one the dragons drifted away. Fizzle went to his cave and looked long and hard at his chocolate biscuit hoard. He knew everyone would laugh if he presented that, but what else could he offer? He'd go and have a chat with Fireworks. At that moment, Fireworks was poking a claw into various bottles, smiling as he imagined bangs, stinks, and gloriously coloured smoke rings. Gleefully, he took down his very best jar of powder. It was sky blue pink with purple spots. When that was put into rockets, the display would be glorious. It'd bring happiness to everyone. But that was only one treasure. He'd go and ask Fizzle what he thought. Morris took down his pot of scale polish. How could life go on without that? The second treasure had to be floating in warm air on a summer evening, but the third baffled him. He would ask Clarice. Meanwhile, Clarice was deep under the hills with her collection of pretty pebbles. Carefully, she chose a clear white stone that turned sunlight into brilliant colours. She loved it best of all, but she didn't mind sharing. Hidden in the cave, it was only a piece of rock. Out in the sunlight, it would glisten and make the others feel happier. She looked about for a second and third treasure, but she couldn't decide. She would go and ask Sparky. Sparky was floating somewhere above the clouds. Since he had learned the answer to why, he'd become really rather good at flying and fishing. Diving out of the sky into the sea was perfect joy to him. He'd bring a few salmon to share at the meeting and tell the others about catching them. Might that count as 2 treasures? He'd ask Horace. Horace looked up and smiled at the sun. That was what he loved best. He filled a bucket of water, staggered with it to the meeting place, and put it where it caught the brilliant golden light. Sitting next to the bucket, Horace remembered how the others had flown to catch the real sun for him. They cared about me, he smiled. If it wasn't such a sad day, I'd be ever so happy. Igneous and Furnace lay on a hilltop and puffed little golden tongues of flame into the clear blue afternoon sky. How they loved fire! What blazes they had made! What rockfalls they had caused when they cleared the streams in the midnight forest! Surely fire was the greatest gift any dragon had, but the second and third treasures baffled them. It's got to be roast shark with samphire and seaweed sauce, Igneous announced. No, Furnace replied firmly. It was the day we found treasure. You're right, but what about number 3? Let's go and see Treasure now, Igneous replied. She'll know the best answer. Far in the distance they saw Treasure walking along the beach, poking at various bits of seaweed, tasting this and scratching that. Even though she was young, she knew a great deal about plants. Treasure sighed and tried not to cry. It was getting late and the Dragon Master would be going soon. Further up the beach, Fireworks was piling wood onto the bonfire. The others were gathering around him with all sorts of bundles in their claws, glittery things, wriggly things, bulky things, bags of things, and tiny, secretly hidden things. All of them treasures. By early evening the tide was high, and the clear green water surged and fell, wreathing the rocks with foam. Still and forlorn, the dragons were seated around their best friend. The Dragon Master stood up. His cloak sparkled in the setting sun. "Well, my wise friends, let me see what you have brought." One by one, all the dragons laid their precious things on a flat rock in the centre of the circle. Before they sat down again, they each whispered something into the Dragon Master's ear. Treasure watched the pile grow. Everything was so different. She was worried. There were bound to be arguments about whose gift was the best. Then there'd be sulking because this and that hadn't been chosen. She wasn't looking forward to calming everyone down. When her name was called at last, Treasure crawled forward and presented the Dragon Master with a small pile of lava weed. "It saved our lives," she began quietly. "We were caught by a storm and stranded in the middle of the sea for days. This was nearly all we had to eat." She looked sad. "But that's all I've bought. I couldn't possibly decide what else to suggest until I've heard what the others think." Then there was silence. The Dragon Master stroked his beard as he surveyed the pile of precious things. No one could guess what he was thinking. What was treasure and what was rubbish? At last the Dragon Master threw back his head and laughed. Then he took off his cloak and threw it into the air, and one by one the twinkling stars came out and shone on the dragon's scales and wings until they shimmered with dancing light. Then the Dragon Master exclaimed, "You've done better than I've hoped. You've each told me the same thing. You all wanted to talk to the others before choosing. This is your first treasure, wanting to work things out together. Next, here we have everything from diamonds to chocolate biscuits. It'd be impossible for you all to agree on your second precious thing because you see different things as important. Your differentness is your second treasure, being yourselves. Lastly, no one has laughed or teased or called anything rubbish. And this is your third treasure, loving and respecting each other. Now you have found the 3 great secrets you had hidden here. I'm certain you can look after yourselves. Care for these things well, and I will be back sooner than you think." The Dragon Master's voice choked. "And may you fly with the west wind while I am gone." Treasure pushed her nose into her friend's hand. "You don't want to go, do you?" she asked softly. The Dragon Master wiped his eyes and sniffed. "No, I'd much rather be here, but I must go and help my cousin. More importantly, you need me to go away." Treasure's eyes widened in horror. "No, we don't." The Dragon Master shook his head. "When you were young, every time something was difficult, I sorted things out for you. And that was right. Now you're older. If I don't go away sometimes, you won't learn to fly the west wind for yourselves. Today you have found a new kind of wings. You are growing up fast, and other creatures will learn from you. Tonight I must go. Tomorrow there'll be new adventures for all of us." The Dragon Master gave his beloved dragons sleep, and taking one last loving look at his silver-winged creatures, he stepped into the shadowy edges of the midnight forest, where a white figure was waiting. Wrapping his cloak around his shoulders, the Dragon Master mounted the huge unicorn and rode away into the dark.